guys, it's Biggs. Welcome back. Now, I've had a couple of videos that have been sitting on the back burner for a long time, and this one needs a little bit of an introduction because I actually lost or misplaced the first section of the video. So if I were to release the second part without explanation, it looked kind of stupid. So more stupid than normal. But basically, last summer I was on the riding lawnmower. Now I don't know if you can see outside. It's so bright out there. It's because everything's just covered in snow. We're in full-on winter now. We're in the middle of December. We're only a couple of weeks away from Christmas. But last summer I was riding the lawnmower. We got 5 acres, so I have a big giant riding lawnmower. And something hit my hand. And I thought it was literally something that got kicked up by the lawnmower, like a rock or something like that. And like I'm sitting on top of the lawnmower, so the likelihood is extremely small that that could ever happen. And it has all sorts of safety features that it can't even throw stuff. So we're pretty safe. But I didn't know what it was. And then about 10, 15 minutes in, after that, I started to get a ton of swelling. And then I started to notice that I had an individual bite on my hand. But it wasn't a wasp. It was very, very different than a wasp. I can tell you that with all certainty, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I didn't know what it was, but I thought this is a perfect opportunity for me to explore, as I like working with things like venom and stuff like that. I want to explore it and see where it would go. I know that where I live, there's no insect that could bite me that could be life-threatening. I'm not, I don't carry an EpiPen. I don't need that. I'm not allergic to any of this stuff. So I knew that I could safely go through this. And it was it literally went on for more than 24 hours. I started out by just watching it and everything like that. I was on a Saturday. We were having a large group of people over for dinner and a bonfire that evening and stuff, and drinks and stuff. And by the time it got closer to later in the afternoon, I actually put on almost like a tensor bandage. It was a compression bandage that I made out of vet wrap. It's elasticized type wrapping stuff. And the compression seemed to really, really help. Now, if you've worked with venoms and different things over the years and stuff like that, you've been bit by myriad of things. Sometimes heat works really well. Sometimes cold works really, really well. Antihistamines and things are sometimes people take to reduce things. But sometimes one other thing I've always used, a trick is compression. And compression seemed to really, really work for this one. So I had all we had in the closet was hot pink compression bandages. So I thought it was kind of funny. And everybody was always bugging me, so when I took it off, I'd leave it off for half an hour or so. All of a sudden, my hand would double in size again right away. It didn't have any real pain after the initial bite, but the swelling was intense. I had this huge, huge swollen hand that I could barely move the fingers on and stuff like that. So that's how it was. And then basically the video is going to pick up here in a second, and it's going to tell you about from the next morning on. And then we're going to talk about venoms, and we're going to talk about some really, really cool, interesting animals. So hope you guys enjoy. Take care. So it's been well over 24 hours, and I haven't worn the bandage overnight and stuff like that. I didn't need the bandage. It wasn't really a bandage. It was more of a compression. The same sort of idea of what you'd do as if you were traveling and you were dealing with wearing compression socks. Same sort of idea. But when I had the bandage on, or the compression bandage on, it seemed to work good. No problem at all. But over 24 hours later, I still have a fair amount of localized swelling. We still don't know what it was. And more just kind of an ache to it. Not really painful, just kind of an ache. It's totally tolerable, and I've got all my movement and everything back, but no idea what it is. So it's just kind of unique. We'll see where it goes. But why don't we talk a little bit about, while we're on the subject here, let's talk a little bit about venom. Now, some of you guys have seen me do my talk on the Mataquarist, and I talk about some of the different animals and stuff that I've worked with over the years, or accidentally been bitten or stung or whatnot. And some of them are kind of silly, and some of them are accidental. And my friend Dan Fryer, who you guys would have met in that one video when we did the thing about the venomous snakes, he made a very, very strong point, and I have to agree with him 100%, that if you ever get bit by a venomous snake, by keeping them, not necessarily in the wild, if you're out in the wild and you walk on a trail and you don't hear the warning sign of something like a rattlesnake and you get bit, well, that's something that can happen. But if you're going to keep these animals, make sure, firstly, that you're able to legally. A lot of states and a lot of provinces don't allow, or cities don't allow, for the keeping of certain animals for logical reasons if that animal were ever to escape. But make sure that you're safe in doing so. But Dan made the point of, it's not a matter, if you're going to get bit by one of these animals by keeping them, it's because people become complacent. And that's honestly 100% true. That's probably exactly what happened with me. I took for granted, just for a split second, what it was. And maybe turn my eye away from the prize a little bit, and that's how it happened to me, and cost a lot of money. But I'm thankful. I got both hands, both arms. I'm good to go. So it was worth it, and it's basically an eye opener. I haven't kept anything along those lines since I've had any children, and I have no intentions of keeping them anymore. Not that I don't want to. It's more just the fact that I got a lot of little kids here and a lot of little daughters, and my wife, and we got some animals, and they all depend on me. So I need to be here doing my job as a father and as a husband and making sure that I'm good for them. So let's talk a little bit about venoms and stuff like that and how they work. Well, some of the animals that I've been bitten or stung, and maybe before we go that far, let's talk about what is venom, what is venomous, what is poisonous, what is toxic. Well, to really dumb it down, if you bite it and you get sick, that's poisonous. If it bites you or stings you and you get sick or something, that's venomous. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple, pretty easy. So a bee, a spider bite, a snake bite, a bee sting, a wasp sting, any of those ones can deliver a venom. But something like poison ivy, where I come into contact with a plant and I develop a rash, that's poisonous. Or toxics are also things that I ingest, and that does a chemical reaction, stuff like that, that makes me sick. That would then also be poisonous as well. Each one to its different degrees and different levels and stuff, and some are bad and some aren't. And, you know, I find it fascinating that, like, one thing that I don't like is I don't eat mushrooms. Never have. Mushrooms are gross. Nobody should eat mushrooms. But you got to think back, you know, hundreds of years ago when people were just wandering around exploring, looking at things, picking things up off the ground and going, can I eat it and try it, and then they die? Well, what if they're out in the woods all by themselves and they died there? Nobody ever knew what happened to Stan. Stan just disappeared one day, went for a walk and disappeared. So you go out in the woods, you know, weeks later, and you're wandering around, you find a mushroom, and you go, I wonder if I can eat it, and you eat it. And then you die. How do they know these things are venomous or poisonous at the very beginning? Well, sorry, not venomous, we just covered that. But poisonous right from the get. How many people had to die before we figured these things out? And what is man's folly about wanting to deal with things like in Asia or Japan, where they want to eat the pufferfish that's deadly poisonous and only can be prepared a certain way? I'm like, why? Because you ate all the other fish? Like, why do you want to eat that? I don't understand that, but whatever. I've done foolish things, and I still continue to do foolish things, like yesterday, as you can know. But we're just having some fun. So let's talk about some of the animals and stuff like that that have affected me over the years. I've been stung by 2 species of scorpion. One was the black emperor scorpion, the big black one there. Comes from West Africa. It's the biggest of all the scorpions, but its venom is actually very, very mild. It is one of the ones that I had the worst reaction to. I remember I was working at a pet store at the time, and I was in the hospital for a couple of days because I had such severe, more not from the venom, but more probably from the barb, like a severe infection. My forearm was like big, like Popeye. Like I had this huge swollen forearm, bright red, similar to what I was dealing with yesterday, but on a larger scale. But it was never at any point life-threatening or anything like that. And once the infection was under control after a couple of days, everything was fine. And the other one I don't remember. I remember it being brown and smaller, but obviously it wasn't one of those deadly ones because you never knew what they were. But back in the day when you worked at pet stores in the mid '80s and stuff like that, reptile department or reptile keeping and all those things that encompass that's where your spiders and your scorpions and all those different things fall under as well. That was all in its infancy at that time. So when you were getting stuff in, there was no reptile products, there was no special lights, there was no special foods. Everyone was just kind of winging it. And the selection of animals that you got were literally just full-on wild harvested. And a lot of them we didn't know anything of the history of the biologies or anything of these animals at the time. And I remember landing big spiders, and I can't remember the spider. I've been bitten by at least 2, possibly 3 types of tarantula-type spider. And they bite by these 2 almost needle-like syringes that go in when they bite this way. And on a big spider, like a normal size, 6-inch sort of Brachypelma tarantula type, those things are about the diameter of the lead of a pencil, and they're razor sharp. So they're delivered very quickly in and out, and then they inject by a little gland, they inject a little bit of venom in behind, and you get localized swelling, and each species can be different. But they use those things for hunting their prey, to immobilize a mouse or whatever their prey sources it is. They want to be able to strike quick, deliver that shot, let it slow down and die, and then they've got their food source that they can then go and eat. Scorpions, on the other hand, do the same sort of thing, but they're usually with a barbed stinger, and that's different. Snakes, I've only ever bitten by one venomous snake, and the results could have been a lot worse, but I'm thankful that it wasn't. Mine was a Massasauga rattlesnake. It was just a little tiny one. It was a little baby. I think it was one that I bred it, and then I bred it was one of my babies, and it didn't even have a rattle. It just had a little button nub. It, hadn't even shed its first shed, I don't believe yet. But it happens. Got complacent for a second, and it happened. Other ones, the big Volatan lionfish. That's what I know it as. It's the same lionfish that is now spread globally in all tropical waters. I remember all over Florida, you see signs for it all over Florida, and if you were diving in Florida or lobster fishing or whatever, and you were to see one, you have to actually send in the GPS coordinates to Fish and Wildlife, and they'll send somebody out to take care of it. But it's to the point now that they are so prevalent that they're just everywhere. It's probably one of the most common fish that you're going to see on any of the reefs all throughout Florida, all the way out to Bermuda. And this comes from all the other side of the world. But it's a pretty common species now. It's non-endemic. It's been completely invasive. But now they're actually using them for different things. People are eating them, they're consuming, they're preparing them and stuff like that, because the lionfish only has, each species may be different, but they can have up to 13 spines all along the back ridge of the dorsal. And I'll show you some pictures of all those individual spines and what they look like. And I remember that one getting stung by that. It was accidental as well. I was cleaning in a tank, and unbeknownst to me that thing was dangerous at the time. I was younger. And it raised against my arm, and somehow either I startled it or something, and I got envenomated. And I think it was on the back of one of my hands. And that one felt like as soon as my hand came out of the water, it felt like I was on fire. That one was pretty bad. But again, a lot of these were when I was younger. I'd say more foolish, but clearly I'm still in that exact same phase, just a hell of a lot older. I got nailed by a big sea anemone that was in one of our big display tanks at one of the stores that I worked at years ago. And it was a type of species, I don't know any of the Latin names on the anemones and stuff, but I think we called it a maroon anemone. And it was, dinner plate kind of size. And it was one of those ones that you could readily handle without any issue. But apparently laying on it for half an hour while cleaning glass and whatnot, it was a very, very large tank, and you had to use a regulator and kind of fell into the tank, and you were doing that stuff. And I guess laying on it for half an hour while doing such things, apparently I didn't like that. And I guess it repeatedly kept hitting me, and I didn't feel anything while I was in the water. But the minute I came out of the water, I was in trouble. And they said that I almost went into cardiac arrest, and I met a good friend there at the time who happened to be a paramedic. Never met him before. And they were all there, and they saw everything kind of happen and everything go down. And I seem to remember they packed me, for some reason they packed me down using frozen fish food packages and stuff like that. I don't know what it was, but he was a paramedic, so obviously he knew what he was doing, and I'm still here to tell the story, so thank you. One of the worst ones, not an envenomation, not a bite or anything like that, but I had been shocked by a very large, like 3-4 foot electric eel. It was about this big in diameter. It was about 4 inches, 3.5, 4 inches in diameter, and it was a big one. And at the time, the tank we were keeping them in, this is going back many, many days, the big tanks, the 50s, were all those old school metal frame tanks that you don't even see anymore. Not slate bottom. We didn't have any slate bottom ones, but it was one of those old metal frame tanks. And apparently I'd been in that tank repeatedly, did maintenance on it, and this is back in the day when under gravel filters were really prevalent, and I was always in there maintaining and stuff, and he kept shorting out heaters, and we knew he was electric, but nobody really had a clue as to what they meant by how much electric. We didn't think it was like, car battery kind of electric. We thought, it's probably a little bit, gives you a little juice or something, but apparently one day it took offense to me being in there, and it hit me full power, and I guess my arms, I must have had both arms on the thing, and my arms were obviously, I was wet, and I was on metal, and probably standing on a metal ladder, and apparently it hit me, and the people that said they saw it, I don't remember any of it, so they saw it. It was like almost like a mini explosion, and I was kind of thrown from the tank. And my back and my butt and everything like that hit another wall of tanks, and I broke some tanks that way. And apparently they said it, I remember coming to, it was either in the ambulance or at the hospital, I don't remember, but apparently it had stopped my heart. And that was a really big electric eel. So these things are dangerous, and we definitely have to respect them a little bit more. So what else was there? The stingrays. Now, with the stingrays, these are some shed spines. These are shed spines that I found in one of my big tanks, the old 750. And all the stingrays I were getting were all like surrenders and stuff like that to the stores. But if you don't know about them, I don't know if you can really see on this. I don't know if it'll focus on it or not, but they're very, very barbed. Like they go in this way, but they're not easy to come out the other way. They're like little steak knives all along here, little tiny barbs. Like that's my finger. It's stuck. I can't move it anymore. But it's got little tiny teeth on it all along it. These are two that I obviously found after the little thing was already made. So, but the one thing that's unique about them is everyone kept talking about them being venomous. Well, freshwater stingrays, I can't talk about saltwater stingrays. I've never kept them. I've never done any reading or studying about them. But the freshwater ones aren't venomous. They don't have any venom gland that'll produce. And this is not a hypodermic needle. This has no delivery system for bringing it. This is meant for just mass destruction and pain, to leave it alone. So it'll jab it into you. The thing that does causes most of the reactions of people is the fact that it has a different type of protein in the mucus sleeve that encases around the spine. Now this is clearly obviously an old shed one. It's bright white. You know, it's nothing. This is no different than a bone now. But they have these little ridges that run along the outside of them. And those must be the delivery, the method of delivery. So it's basically you're having that reaction to the protein that is in that mucus kind of coating. Because when it bites you, because when you see these on the animal, they've got like almost like a skin covering all the way around them, and that's what's going to have those venom-like properties and stuff. But I did one of the things that happened with me is in my big tank. It was a 750-gallon tank, and by finding these, they're not always just sitting there on top of the gravel. Obviously, hey, there's another one, let's go get it. No, they're often buried in the gravel because the animals sift it up and they get buried in the substrate. And when I was ever in the tank cleaning or working, I'm either in there kneeling or I'm shuffling around with my hands and stuff like that in the substrate and stuff like that and cleaning the tank, or stirring it up a little bit and everything like that. And when you keep tanks on that scale, you can't really do the standard, I'm going to use my little gravel cleaner. It doesn't work on that scale. So you got to do things a little bit differently, and you have to adapt for it. But I remember finding one of these spines. It's one of these. I don't know which one it was. And it just kind of poked in the end of one of my pinky fingers by sifting through the substrate and that. And as soon as it happened, I was like, oh, that's weird. And I pulled it out, no big deal. But then I started getting the sensation of venom. Now in my brain, I know they're not venomous because they don't have a true venom gland, so they can't inject anything. But I started going through the whole sensations and everything. So I came out of the tank, and I very calmly, and that's key, anytime you ever were to be involved with an animal that is potentially venomous, the one thing you have to always make sure that you do is you keep really, really calm. I know it's easy to say that, but that is the thing that can make a difference between life or death if it is a dangerous animal. Because if you keep calm, you keep your heart rate going lower. If you get excited and I'm scared and all of a sudden your heart rate amps up, it's going to push everything through your system so much faster. And by keeping nice and calm, it's easier and the progression's a lot slower. So what I did is I got out of the tank and I dried myself off, and I told my wife, and I said I need a stopwatch or a watch. It was before phones were really prevalent, that you had with all the features on a phone now. And I need a Sharpie marker. Well, in a fish room, Sharpie markers are everywhere, so it was no problem for that. And basically I sat down on the couch for I think it was about 45 minutes. And I just charted the progress of how it was moving through my body. And when you're dealing with a snake bite or a rattlesnake or something that's venomous and has a large potential, the thing can progress fairly quickly and go to a much larger area. But when I was dealing with this thing, knowing full well in my brain that there's no actual venom here, it's a protein type thing, I was saying, where's this going? What's it going to do? And I progressed it, and it never got past my wrist. I had a little bit of localized swelling on the finger. It didn't really do anything much on the hand, but the venom, the pain, it wasn't that painful, but it was something it was progressing through the hand. And that was kind of weird because, knowing in my brain, not venomous, but still taking the same type of protocols if it was, and knowing when I'm in my safe zone and when I've got to start considering another option. Do I got to go to a hospital or something like that? So I was progressing, and it never went past my hand. And then after about 45 minutes, the whole sensation started fading, and then just started to recede and go away. So it was but it was a very, very unique experience. Definitely not for everybody else, but it was kind of cool. I've had myriads of other little encounters, we'll call them. I did have part of my finger, had to have a finger kind of partially rebuilt from an encounter with a caiman. Caiman were lots of fun. It's a member of the crocodile alligator families and stuff, but they're known for being just generally aggressive. And this wasn't a big one. It was only about 3 or 4 feet long, but little razor, little sharp teeth and stuff like that. Just caught me the wrong way. Again, it's not that you can't blame the animal. It's all in the nature. You want to play with these animals, this is the thing that may happen very well. Myriad of different types of lizards, tegu lizards. Now they're all rampant, running all over the place, all over Florida and stuff. I've never seen one there, but when we used to get them in back in the day, they weren't the nice, calm pet store captive bred ones that you see everywhere now. These were full-on, wild-caught, mean. And I think that none of these things were venomous, the tegus or any of all these other types of non-venomous snakes I've kept over the years that you get bit. But sometimes people have reactions to these things, and it has the same sort of type of style or feelings or sensations or properties to something that may very well be venomous. And more often than not, it's usually just from the bacteria or the proteins that are actually in the animal's mouth. Like you hear about Komodo dragons, are they venomous? No, Komodo dragons aren't venomous. However, they eat carrion, they eat rotting things, they eat dead things, and they'll tear apart a carcass that's been sitting on the beach in full sun for a week. That's how they eat. So if you happen to get bit by one, I wouldn't recommend it. If you were to get bit by something like that, more than likely you'll die of sepsis, which will be basically is a bacteria that's getting into that wound, and that wound's going to get so badly infected that bacteria is going to spread through your bloodstream, and that's the thing that'll take you out. It's not the fact that the animal is venomous. Are there venomous lizards? Yes. There is the Gila monsters, any of the Gilas, and the beaded and plated lizards, and they're all in I think they're all in the genus Helioderma. And I've played with them. They're very, very docile animals, but again, respectfully, playing with these animals respectfully. I kept in my laundry room for the longest time. We had an alligator snapping turtle, and I eventually got to the point, and I said, this is just crazy. One of my kids is going to go down there, help mom doing laundry one day while I'm away, and accidentally drop a toy in there and then go to reach it in. And this thing was in a 180-gallon galvanized metal horse trough. And every time you walked in there, there was a bam! You heard him hitting the side of the thing all the time. He was just an ornery, mean animal. There was zero reason for anybody to keep them. Is it fascinating? Yes. But I wanted to have him in a way that I could put him in a large aquarium and see him. But knowing what he was doing and putting dents on the side wall of that metal horse trough, I thought, no, I can't put him in an aquarium where somebody's going to go and look at him. He's going to hit the side of the tank and punch the whole frame of the tank out or something. But they are destined. You just see them in these giant, large public aquariums. I know there was a beautiful giant one. I think it was in the Shed Aquarium in Chicago. But it's probably in a tank. It's a couple thousand gallons, and it's probably behind a 2-inch piece of solid acrylic. It's not something I have at home, so there's no reason I need to have one of those ever again. So maybe some other animals and stuff like that, or insects and things that have caused some issues over the while. Like, I guess you guys are starting to see a pattern here. The list is pretty extensive. Biggs has done a lot of dumb stuff. I remember back in the day we used to catch bees on the, in your hand and stuff, and they wouldn't sting you until you let them go because they couldn't see, I guess, or something. Then you let them go, and then they'd sting you, or they'd leave you alone. It didn't really matter. But I remember one year working under a lilac bush. We had a huge lilac bush on our old house, and working underneath the lilac bush, trimming some of the dead old stock to rejuvenate the tree. And I guess I had uncovered, unbeknownst to me at the time, that wasps don't need to build a nest in a tree or attached to something. They can actually build them in the ground. And I'm literally underneath the tree, like a huge shrub, on my hands and knees. And apparently I unearthed a wasp nest. And it could take every ounce of power for me to get out of there as quickly as possible. And my wife relates the story that I basically kind of fell into the house, fell up the stairs, and fell onto the floor, basically convulsing or kind of like having a mini seizure. And it took a long time for the symptoms to subside. She was almost ready to call an ambulance, but she could clearly see, and she counted 27 stings on my head. Ouch. But you know, that one was bad. But there's this TV show that my father-in-law just told me about now. People that don't know me, we don't have TV. We have a TV where we live, but we only use Netflix, and now we have Disney. So the kids are all excited about that, and that's good enough for me. And but we don't have regular TV, and we haven't since we moved out here about 5-6 years ago. Now that's cool, but so I don't keep aware of all the stuff that's happening. But when I travel, there's TV in my hotel rooms, and then when I travel and I go to one city where my wife's from, I stay with my in-laws. And my in-laws were telling me about this because I was working on this video while I was there. And they were telling me about this show called Kings of Pain. And I thought, that sounds kind of crazy. Let's look that up. And I looked it up and just looked it up on my iPad. And I started looking at all the things that these guys are doing. And they're literally all the things that have happened to me already. But these guys are doing it on purpose. Why would you do this on purpose? Mine are all like accidental or, you know, out in the wild or on the field or whatever. But like on purpose? Like they did one that I just giggled so much on fire ants. Now, if you're from the states, southern states, you guys know full well what fire ants are. But up here in Canada, we don't have fire ants. But down at one of the fish farms that we travel to regularly, we have fire ants. And they're really, really there. And they're really, really prevalent. And because there's so much scrub and everything like that around the ponds where you're working, you don't necessarily see them until they find you. And when they find you, you know about it. So when we're dealing with these fire ants, it was really funny. We had this great story. We were down there one time. There was 4 of us, me and a couple of buddies from here, and a buddy from Bermuda named Neon. And we were fishing away in the trenches, catching doveye and all these big rogue cichlids that inhabit this trench that engulfs the perimeter of the whole fish farm. So biosecurity, nothing ever leaves the pond. It's just one little step that the farmer's gone and done. So we're sitting there with our fishing rods and our bait, and we're basically just fishing for an afternoon of fun to see what we could catch. And one of us happened to find this fire ant thing. So we had this bucket, a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket beside us, and it had water. And that's why if we caught fish, we put them in there. If we wanted to keep them, then we take them to the fish house and stuff. But there was a couple of fish in that bucket, and Neon came over, and one of the guys said, "Hey, Neon, there's a real good spot right over here to fish." So Neon went and stood right on top of the fire ant thing, because they don't have those in Bermuda. Stood right on top of that fire ant thing, and he started fishing. And it only took about 30 seconds or so before he got bit many, many, many times. And he jumped into that 5-gallon bucket, and it's just, the pain was just unbearable for about 10-15 minutes. And it feels like, they call them fire ants, because it literally feels like people are putting out matches or cigarettes on your skin. It's a horrible, horrible feeling from a little tiny, tiny bug. But whatever. I remember, you know, talking about Bermuda. I remember one time when I was in Bermuda with a bunch of friends, and I've spoken there several times. And this one time I was there, I had my big DSLR camera with the big lens and the big battery pack and everything like that. And on the coastline, it's all like very, very jagged, almost like a lava rock kind of type material that's basically makes their coast. And I was jumping amongst these rocks to try and get out further onto kind of like a peninsula to take a picture back at this nice beach that we were all on and stuff. I just thought it'd be really picturesque. You know, when you got $4 or $5 grand worth of camera equipment, leaping over salt water onto other rocks that are jagged is a real solid plan. But I had no problems, took the pictures, and on the way back, one of the way backs, I kind of lost my footing a little bit, and I leaned back on the wall, and no, I didn't get scratched up by the lava rock, or whatever you call it. I got completely impaled on their native, it's like a prickly pear cactus. It has these big ovate leaves with about spikes about that big on it, and they come in like a little rosette. There's like one in the middle and 4 or 3 around the side and stuff, and they break off as soon as you touch them. Well, that hurt. Not only did it hurt falling onto it, hurt coming off it, because I have to rip all those things off the plant. And then I had to go. They were all in one of my forearms. I believe it was my right forearm, because I couldn't use the camera the next day. And I go to the beach and I show these guys, and they go, "Holy crap." So we start pulling these things out, and they're kind of barbed a little bit, but not like a stingray barb. So we pull them all out and everything like that, and that was it. But about half hour later, the swelling started. And my arm got so big and red. It was this huge Popeye-like forearm, and my hand and everything was all just swollen and red. They really, really, really wanted to take me to the hospital. And I said, "No, let's just leave it for a bit." I had Benadryl. I always carry with Benadryl with me in my in my travel bag, just because, you know, these things could happen, could fall on a cactus. But there's no venom or anything like that. There's no conveyance. I don't know what caused the allergen or what you want to speak of. I don't know. But I took some Benadryl, and the next day, my arm was totally fine. But I remember showing it to Scott, and I says, feel my arm, like just feel it. And it was just hard. It was pretty funny. So, but, you know, you get similar type of things from a lot of the little catfish and loaches. Like, who here has never ever worked in a pet store, or if you've never caught a clown loach and been nailed by one of their little cheek spines, you'll remember that. You know, that's not something you'll soon forget. Or working with almost any of the little catfish, like the little Pictus cat, the little tiny Pictus cat from South America, that bright silver with the bright black and white spots. Beautiful. No, white spots, black spots. Long feelers. It's a beautiful little pilmedellid. But you catch one of those the wrong way, those pectoral spines and that dorsal spine, they do have a little bit of venom to them, and they can hurt you. Make your hands numb for a little while, give you a bit of swelling. You catch even some of the bigger pilmedells, like tiger shovel nose or something like that, and you get nailed by one of the pectoral spines with that, it might put you down for an hour or so. Like, it's going to hurt. So treat these animals with a bit of respect. I'm very, very thankful for a couple of things. I'm still here for one. You know, I've had a lot of mishaps and a lot of things, and some of them are me just being foolish behavior and things happen and experimenting and stuff. I don't recommend that on anybody else. Biggs grew up in the kind of the jackass area, and he's very much a jackass, so he likes doing things his own way. But I'm thankful that I've never been hit or stung or bit by anything that's really, really dangerous or lethal. I've had a couple of serious encounters, but I've never had anything that's really, really been life-threatening. I've never had an encounter with a jellyfish yet, so of course that's on our list of what we want to have, is a jellyfish aquarium. Of course we do. And I've never been nailed by any of those things called stonefish, or maybe even that one from India. Maybe we should get one of those freshwater lionfishes that look like a saltwater lionfish, but it's just brown and they sit on the bottom, and they're super venomous. Yeah, we should get one of those. That sounds like a cool pet for the kids. So, but I don't know. Let's go check out that show. Let's go check out Kings of Pain. There's another guy on YouTube that does a bunch of crazy stuff, and he did this pain thing where he was getting nailed by all these different types of bugs and wasps and everything. It's just priceless watching a guy scream in agony on the ground because he did it on purpose. Like, all right, to each his own. Biggs is dumb, but not that dumb. So, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Take care.